All right, hello. We're going to be watching a demo from Akuspel again today. Um, so it's a match on Anubis. It ends 10 to 12. So he's got a few things he's looking for, mainly in CT side information, mainly about feedback about how to kind of play. Um, Mentions stuff about spraying with M4A1, as well as figuring out how to find a purpose. Last time I did a demo review, I kind of spent the first about 5 minutes going over the key points. This time, I think I'm going to spend about the first 20-30 minutes going over the stuff first, showing everything, and then I'll go ahead and watch the demo afterwards. I've seen the demo in advance, so I'm aware of my main um, what the main points are. So we're gonna start with how I prefer to play sewer. This is my favorite spot on the map. This is where I love to play. Sometimes I'll play over here by camera, um, sort of being the rotate player, but generally I prefer to play this kind of sewer or back here on plat. This spot is also called E-box or dark, sometimes connector, but I usually call it sewer or E-box. So there's a few ways to really be playing it, which is very surprising because it's just one angle. You're holding the cross, you're making sure that no one's able to come across, and even despite that, they're still able to go around. So how can you really be useful here? And you really can't. Sort of. It's hard. Um, your goal really is get information and maybe get an early pick. If you get an early pick, perfect. But really, you're just here for information. And why is that? Let me go ahead and uh, increase my radar scale so we can see a little bit more. So if you look up at the top, you'll see that you can see this sort of middle section. You can hear this if I walk around. You can see that I can hear all of that, and you can also hear all of B main. So you serve as the alarm bell. You are the one who's going to hear that something's happening on B before anyone else. You'll also hear a little bit about mid before anyone else. And so you have to pretty much play your life. You are a very valuable player in this position, and so if you die early, because this is like the first engagement anyone ever takes, if you die early, that's really, really bad. And so you have to know how to play it. So usually how I like to do it is I'll just peek dry, usually for about the first half of the half, and see how it goes. See and read how the enemy team is playing. Are they running across? Are they fighting this angle? Are they going back to it throughout the round and see what happens? What I usually do is I will, if I see someone and I want to take a fight, I'll bank a smoke off this wall here. It can be anywhere on it, but usually it'll land up here, and what that'll do is it'll give you cover to swing out and get an off angle. You're also able to just push up, and it's a very, very loose lineup, and it kind of has to land. Well, it doesn't really have to land anywhere in particular. As long as it's landing down here, that gives you cover to swing out. And what you can do is you can peek for information at a slightly more aggressive angle than you can back here. Of course, you're putting yourself at risk, but I think it's rather good. You can also, if you throw it a little bit higher, get the smoke to land in the water, and when that happens, you can actually see over it. And so you can use it as sort of like a one-way. It's obviously it's a lot less safe, but you can kind of play around the stairs and use it like this. I generally prefer to throw it so that it lands up top, though. And that's really the main way that I would ever recommend challenging middle. You can of course throw a flash off of this and fight with it. You can sort of throw a Molotov up. My usual lineup is pretty bad, is you hold left and right click and just aim to the right of this, and that's gonna Molotov this drop. You can pretty much line it up anywhere as long as it clears the wall, which is gonna be pretty much anywhere along this, like the line from like here to here. So as long as you throw it up there, it's gonna land up top, and what that'll do is it'll deny the drop. All right. The way you should not be playing Canal is by pushing. You can make stuff work, but the problem is you get to here, and now you're exposed to middle, and you're exposed to main, and then when you get to here, you've got to clear all this out and check this, and it's a very, very hard spot to be in. It's powerful as a flank, but because you're never really safe from a flank, you know, this isn't like lurking in Palace on Mirage where there's no other way for someone to get to you. You have to constantly be worried about other people. If I'm here, I have to be worried about someone up there and someone in front of me. If I'm up here, I have to be worried about someone here, maybe to the left, maybe up there, maybe to the right. If I'm here, I have to be worried about someone up there or someone behind me. And obviously context will dictate if you should be worried about someone behind you, but someone could always be lurking up here. And you have to be mindful of that. Which is why I generally don't like pushing it. If I ever do push, and usually I get punished for it, I'll always go up these steps instead. And then I won't even bother going to A. If I have to play A, I'm just going to go through middle. I don't think... Generally, it's not that great to be pushing here just because he makes so much noise. It's not possible to get to A main while being quiet. If you see on the minimap, that water is a lot louder than if you're just running on one. And that's really the disadvantage of flanking here. There's a couple interesting things you can do. You can jump up on these like baskets here, and you can hold a mid push. Of course, you have to be mindful that you're not exposed to this. But that's how I'd recommend playing E-Box, at least if you're looking towards the middle. If you're looking towards main, B main, you can just kind of throw a smoke off this wall, and that's your job done. You can throw some flashes maybe off of that pillar. Those aren't too great because, as you'll notice, they pop behind it. And so you can also just throw it to the left, but of course that'll just pop above you. There's really not too much you can do in terms of utility, which is kind of why I like this spot, because you don't have to use too much. It's hard to retake B from here because you're funneled through this like very tight corridor, and as you might remember just from the geometries of Counter-Strike, the closer you are to an angle, the more of a disadvantage you're going to be. So if you're taking a fight in Temple, you are like this close to the you are this close to the like angle, and they've got all this, so they've got a huge advantage there, and you can't really throw utility like through anything that's going to help you. So if you're retaking B, you need to have support, and you need to be able to communicate with your teammates about that, about what you need. Do you need flash? Like, generally it's just going to be a flash. Do you need a smoke? One thing I like to do is I'll just kind of smoke these steps here, and that'll let you cross more or less to this pillar, and that'll just give you some different angles. You can clear out all this spot, and then you can worry about main. You can try to throw a Molotov, but because you're throwing up above you, it's a little hard to aim properly, so it's okay if you're trying to stop a plant, but if you're able to throw the Molotov here, you're able to get shot. But anyways, I mentioned earlier you're kind of like the alarm bell, and there's 1 or 2 rounds where you're playing, I think it's 2 rounds, where you're playing an E-Box, and especially on pistol round, they get all the way out B before there's even a reaction from you. Part of that could, of course, be your teammate isn't communicating that, but you should be able to hear stuff from down here. And you might not realize it, but middle and B main sound different. And so I'll go ahead and I'll shut up so that you can hear it. But if I'm going B main, it's going to sound like this. So here there's a lot of stone there. And then if I go to middle, you hear how much dirt is mixed in. So the more dirt you hear, the more likely they're going to middle, or that they're hanging out around here. Of course, they can be quiet, but you can also just use directional audio. If you're looking this way and you're hearing someone this direction, of course it means they're going to be middle. You didn't really play A, but I'll also I'll mention, because you played in this position, you can use the fact that middle and main sound different. So obviously you heard middle sounded like the dirt. But if they're going down to a main, it's going to sound like this. You'll hear wood. And you'll maybe hear water too. And then, of course, if you're going through this canal here, you'll hear almost exclusively brick. You won't hear the dirt that you're going to hear in middle, as well as if you're standing in this corner, the people are going to get louder from this direction, while the people here are going to get louder from in front of you. You mentioned stopping yourself from spraying with the M4A1. I really didn't see that as a problem. You only sprayed like once or twice, and when you did lose those fights, they were disadvantageous in the fact, just in the way that you took them. Generally, it was the 2 or 3 fights that I'm remembering. You didn't like counter strafe out, and that's really all it was. And instead, you like took diagonal, or you're just walking forward into the angle instead of taking a strafe out and stopping when you see them. And I'll mention those specific cases when we watch the demo. On T side, I want to talk a little bit about entry pathing. Since you mentioned you're struggling on Anubis, I'm just going to assume you've never played it. I know you have, but I just want to make recommendations for your entry pathing, especially on B site. We'll talk about A as well for consistency, but for B site, typically what you did is you just kind of ran up towards this diagonal spot. And sure, you know, you had smokes down. Oops, I threw that too far. You had smokes down like here, and you had a smoke there. Maybe one back here. And sure, like you know, no one's really gonna shoot you if these smokes are down, but they still can. You know, there could still be someone in front of this. There could still be someone behind the pillar. These smokes make it easier to fight these people, but it doesn't mean that they disappear. And so you still want to be making sure that with these smokes down, you have a decent entry path. You don't want to be exposing yourself to, you know, 3, 4, maybe 5 angles at once. That was a mistake. You don't really want to be exposing yourself to that many angles. So usually when you take an entry path, you're going to be hugging a wall. You're going to be strafing along it. 2 reasons for that. One, the wall is covering your back, so you don't have as many angles to worry about. And 2, if you're against the wall, you're strafing. You're not holding W. You're strafing. And strafing, it's much easier to counter strafe. It's much easier to stop. When you're strafing, you're moving much faster compared to the angles that you want to fight. You know, if someone's here and I'm strafing out, I'm going to be moving faster than if I'm like running towards him, you know, at least in terms of horizontally. And that's just something that kind of comes with the geometry. And if you were to split like a velocity along 2 different angles, just making sure you're counter strafing, and you can kind of force yourself to do that by taking these certain entry paths. So there's generally 2 main entry paths that I'd recommend you do for B site. And that's going to be going to the left and going to the right and hugging both those walls. I generally prefer going to the right just because you see more of the angles that people are going to be. If you go to the left, you really only you really are only clearing out like 3, maybe 4 spots. Well, if you're going to the left or to the right, you're able to clear out a bunch of different spots, a lot more spots I feel than if you were to go along that left wall there. But both are still good. So I've kind of been showing it, but for the entry path for the right side, ideally this smoke is pretty much always going to be here. There's really no world where you don't have it, and so that just makes it a lot easier to entry. So you're going to use this pillar to your advantage. You're going to kind of come up. You are going to W and D a little bit, but these are not common angles, which is why I'd feel a little more comfortable doing it. And then, now that you've done that, you can shift your focus to swinging out here, clearing that, and then you can go to properly strafing to take these like angles there, clear that, and then you can get ready to take a fight for a guy in E-box. And then after that, this fight right here is not one you should really ever be taking. It's this one here. It's very hard to win, so ideally you have someone over there who can take it for you. In that case, you can focus more on clearing like CT, like this, and then you can worry about going into temple if that's your thing. Generally, I wouldn't push past this doorway unless it's like a 5v2 and you guys are hungry. If it's like a 4v2, I'd just sit back on site. Now, this smoke, well, it's good to have. It's going to make your entry path on the left side a little bit harder. Sort of. You're able to clear down here towards E-box, but you aren't really able to do much more. You can jump up on top of here and maybe clear behind this or this. You do kind of expose yourself to 2 angles at once, so you have to be mindful. If you have to kind of jump up on this close side to clear that, and then you can worry about this. So instead of this smoke, what you can do is you can have like a CT smoke thrown, kind of like this. And that way you can still kind of see towards temple and you can scale up around it. Usually that CT smoke is deeper. throw it so that it lands in a spot that it's actually going to land in. So something like this. And so this will just give you space. You can clear the back site. You can clear temple. And, you know, your teammate in sewer has probably cleared this spot, so you don't have to worry about it. And then you can clear that back corner there. That's how you clear if you don't have any utility. If you have utility, of course, it makes it different. I pretty much always throw a Molotov back there. I like to smoke temple. Of course, that means someone could still lurk out, but I generally like to smoke temple. Molotov and E-Box, it's okay, but they can still peek behind it. But definitely, if you have a Molotov, I recommend just throwing it back there. You could even throw one like on the back of sight, kind of like this, just to flush them out from behind. But that's getting to, it's a little bit outside of really what I want to discuss here. So those are the two main entry paths. I'll talk about sewer because sometimes you'll come through here. You have to be a little faster with it. Simply because the angles aren't as good. So you're pretty much going to be lurking out and you'll be coming up to here. I wouldn't really go past this angle, but you can hold CT and then you can worry about moving over across this line. I would not recommend ever going past here until you know that back corner is clear. And then as I mentioned, for the sake of sort of redundancy, or because I did it for B site, we'll talk about A site. A site's really hard because you have to pass this line here, and going through middle is generally not an option. On B site, you know, you've got two main ways to go to the site. You can go through the canal, or you can go through main. And if you happen to have mid control, you can take that. But generally speaking, on A site, what's going to happen is you have to come through here, and so someone's just going to sit here with like a sniper or an AUG or something, and they're just going to mow you down. So generally, you're going to want a smoke for heaven up here. You had your own lineup, so I won't bore you with one, or you can have a teammate throw it. That just makes it easier to kind of scale up. As I mentioned, you're going to want to kind of hug the walls. The two main entry paths are going to be along this line and along this line here. So you can hug the walls, and you can fight someone here, and then you kind of want to push up against the pillar so that you can check there, and then you can swing out behind it. Clear that headshot angle again, and then clear middle. You generally don't want to be the person clearing out this spot just because you have to adjust your crosshair a lot. So this is generally going to be the job of the person who scales up on the left. What they'll do is they'll clear out this like section here. They can maybe hold heaven while their teammates pushing up so that they don't get swung from there, and they can clear headshot, and then they can adjust for middle. And this is a lot more favorable because if you can kind of imagine someone walking down these steps, where is their head going to be? So if they're up in middle, their head's going to be about here. If they're on this platform, their head's going to be about here. So the difference between that's, it's not that much. It's a very easy adjustment. And then if they're up close, their head's going to be right here. So you only have to move your crosshair like this much. And they're going to be closer to you, so they'll be easier targets. Well, up here, you're going to have to move your crosshair from up here to down there. And that's not really, it's not as good. You want to be avoiding that. And as well as when you're clearing the corner, you're going to have to worry about this, and you don't want it to be taking a 50-50 fight here. The person down here, when they come in, well, this is still a 50-50. Their adjustment's going to be anywhere between here and here. And, like, that's it. So they don't have to adjust this much. And then, obviously, once you have plat, and once you've like cleared that stuff out, you can kind of just go in and plant. It's A site doesn't have as complex entry paths, purely because like the entry is, it's just this, like the entry is just everything behind here. And so the last thing I want to show you is sort of how I practice my aim, or how I sort of warm it up. I generally prefer aimbots. However, in CS2 they've made it so it's not easy to set it up in the way that I want to set it up, so I've switched to using the CS stats map. And the reason I bring this up is because you mentioned, you know, you try to spray at long range and it doesn't really work out for you. So how would I recommend you practice that? So personally, the way I practice is I leave near and mid on, I remove far, and then I drop the bot count down to 3. So this is how I practice my bursts and my taps. So if I'm bursting, like this. And the reason you do it like this is because they're going to respawn just as fast as you kill them. I do not like it. I don't like it when it's like this because they're too close together. And what will happen, especially on aimbots, is that they'll line up. And so like if you're killing them when they're lined up, you're not really like getting any benefit from it, in my opinion. So that's how I do my bursts and stuff like that. Is my taps. It warms up my arms because it's these wide flicks usually. This is why I prefer doing it on aimbots, because you narrow it to 90-degree field of view. And you can also, if you want to an even narrower field of view, you can go in here and you can use these these controls to focus them. So because I've narrowed it to middle, they're only going to be between here and here. And if you wanted a wider range, you can do near and far, or near middle, and even wider. Well, you can do this, but then it's just the same thing as if you were over here. But that's not quite what you were asking. What you were asking is how you practice, or you weren't really asking, but what I'm telling you is sort of how to practice your spraying. So we're going to go ahead and add a couple more bots, and we're going to go ahead and make it so they spawn near and middle. I don't really like far, because generally no one's really going to be past this point in game. Most angles are going to be closer than this, which is why I prefer it. But if you find that you prefer longer range angles, then you can add it in far. And so what you'll do, the reason why I've added some bots back in, is it's spray transfers. And I'm going to tell you my philosophy. It is not a popular philosophy. It is a controversial one, if you will. And that is, I don't think a perfect spray is important. I know. That's like, it's like mic drop, like holy shit. I really don't think that getting a perfect spray is important. What's more important to me is understanding sort of intuitively where you are in your spray, and based on that, where your crosshair needs to be. So like, yeah, of course, like that's important, but like why, you know? So if you are sitting here and you're practicing your spray like this, okay, and you get every single bullet in the exact same spot, you know, I can't even do that. I won't lie. I don't practice my sprays because of other reasons. But if you get here and you get every crosshair, you know, or every bullet exactly in the middle, exactly where your cursor is, what's that mean? You know, when you get in game, what's that mean? So when you're in game, you're going to be aiming at head height. And so if you're practicing your perfect sprays, and you can only do perfect sprays, if you can't, let me back up a little bit. So you're in game, you're aiming at head height, and you decide you need to spray. He's dead already. All right. Let's say you go in game and your crosshair's off, and you're doing this perfect spray. Because you have in your muscle memory the movement, not the understanding, but the movement, you are going to struggle because you can't correct mid-spray. And that's what practicing your spray transfers is really for. It's correcting yourself mid-spray, because if you need to spray, you've essentially, it's sort of like admitting that you missed your first shot. And of course, you know, you can miss your shot. There is an inherent inaccuracy. You know, if I shoot my bullet, it's not going to go exactly where my crosshair is. It's going to go a little bit off from the middle. So I hope that makes sense. I feel like I have a lot more to say about it, but I understand it's controversial. I completely understand if you're like, that is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I get it. I completely get it. You don't have to practice like this. You can practice your sprays. But my philosophy is that if you want to practice your sprays, you should be transferring spray transfers. Or you should be starting with your crosshair intentionally off from the head, and then you correct. And that's just, in my opinion, I think it'll help. So yeah, you can, you know, do this, but because the M4A1S, like both bullets go the same spot, like there is no recoil really with the M4A1S, or it's very, very subtle. So you can practice your sprays either by transferring, so you start with one, and then you correct to the other. You start with one, and then you correct to the other. And that's how I believe you should be correcting your spray, or training your spray. But I just want to make sure that what I'm saying is kind of clear. Because I understand, I know that people are like, that's preposterous. Why would you practice your spray transfers when you can't spray? I used to be in that camp. I used to be in the philosophy that spray transfers are stupid as shit. Well, not stupid as shit, but I believed that you should go from like tapping and bursting to spraying to spray transferring. It's kind of like how you should be learning the aim. I think you should just skip the sprays, kind of. Of course, you should know that you should pull straight down for most guns. That's sort of known. But if you're looking to work on the left to right stuff, I think you need to be doing it with these bots. Also, turn off the infinite ammo thing. That way, you aren't sitting here. If you're on infinite ammo, at least. What you don't want to have happen is you're sitting here going like this. And now all the crosshair's doing is moving left to right. And, like, these are bullets that are never going to get shot. So, like, why would you practice them? So, doing finite mode is good if you find yourself spraying too much, or if you're, like, going for 30 bullet sprays with a 20 bullet gun. I understand reloading is annoying, so you should probably use infinite and, like, discipline yourself. You just do, like, 2 at a time. Maybe don't do spray transfers that much. That's why I add more bots. So you have spray transfers between 2 spots. And that way, you can kind of transfer it in-game a little bit better. As I mentioned, you can add the far range as well. Because, like, some angles are going to have this. That's essentially what I recommend. You can also turn on shuffle. And this is another way you can transfer you can practice your sprays. You start on one, and then you correct to the other. And of course they have head armor, so it doesn't kill them in one shot. And you can just practice like that. So, as I mentioned, I understand that this is like advice that no one has ever given before. I understand that it is a little goofy, but at least consider it. I hope that what I've said at least made enough sense that you can form your own opinion on if you think it makes sense or is good for you or not. It's simply what I recommend. Maybe just give a shot, or at least integrate it into your routine. You know, you can practice your sprays and like the spray maps, but then I recommend practicing it on actual bots and practice transferring. Or if you don't really want to transfer, as I mentioned, you just start with your crosshair off, and then you correct it on part of the way through. So that's really all I have for the comment you made about your sprays. As I mentioned, I didn't really see it in game. The main times when you died with the M4 is when you took the fight in a way that wasn't good in the first place. It wasn't that the aim was bad, it's that the movement was not optimal. And I don't want to say your movement is bad, because there's a lot of times you just have a good movement. It's just in those circumstances, in those fights, you happen to have bad movement. You weren't like ready for it, and so you didn't strafe. And you really kind of always have to be ready for it. But anyways, I've rambled on for enough. Now we can go ahead and actually watch the demo. So on this pistol round, as I mentioned earlier, you really should kind of hear them here. You can hear them all over the place out there, and you're a bit too focused on Canal here. It could be a communication issue, like maybe your teammate didn't communicate, but I am happy you waited at least for, who is this, Ice Coke to show up, before you retook the site. So there would have been a good spot to be counter-strafing, and be a little bit more deliberate, a little more purposeful with how you're peeking. The reason being, I don't know what your team did, but the reason mainly being you sort of walked into the guy and you weren't really ready for it. So here you're going to buy an SMG, and you are going to fight Canal with it, which I do not like. At the most, or at the bare minimum, if you're going to swing Canal, you need either a FAMAS or a Scout. Those are the cheapest guns I will ever accept. anyone peeking canal with or fighting canal with. You can peek, you can jiggle, but please don't be looking for a fight here. It's not a good fight to be taking. You do, I believe you get a kill, and then you die to a rifle, but it's especially disadvantageous here because you know they got the bomb plate, you know they got the round, and so they're going to be buying here. They're going to have Galils, they're going to have AKs, and they do. And um, so they are just going to have an advantage in this fight. You know, their bolts are just going to do more damage, and their recoil is just going to work in their favor compared to your SMG, which is just going to kind of splatter shot sort of, and maybe do some damage. It does. You do. Like I mentioned, I believe you get a kill. If not this round, the next one. But like for a while, you were concerned about sewer, and then you swung with your back towards it. And this is why I said sewers. It's a really hard spot to play, because you're so kind of limited in where you can go if they take somewhere. You know, if they take B site, you really only have to canal to fall back to. If they take canal, you really only have B site to fall back to. And you're lucky if you're able to fall back to those, because usually if they take one, they've got the other. So you do manage to kill this guy with the Glock, but this guy with the Krieg killing you. If you're taking a fight from here, if you want to hide from it, you have to go up into this corner. But if they have B site, this corner is not safe. And so if you're taking a fight from B site, you have to fall back towards canal as cover. And canal is not safe because someone could be there. And that's exactly what's happened here. Ideally, I think you should have pushed somewhere to take space. Ideally, you're going to be pushing out onto B site because it has these closer angles. Worst case scenario, you fall back to canal and maybe you like sit this corner on an off angle or something. But ideally, I think you would have pushed out on B site and supported your team a little bit from there. So this round, you buy another MP9. You buy body armor again, no head armor, no utility, and you decide to peek. Now you begin to push into it, which I'm not a fan of. As I mentioned, you know they have rifles, so it's a very dangerous thing to end up getting punished here. Peeking out there was not probably the worst outcome. If they are taking a site, as I mentioned earlier, you really don't want to be pushing here. Like, it can be good, but it's a really bad angle to be pushing, especially if you have an MP9. In almost all scenarios, I prefer to fall back through mid and help through a camera, is what I call this spot. Some people call like mid steps or stairs or whatever. It's generally going to be better to peek out through here. And that way, you and your teammates can kind of peek out like this instead of doing this. Because if you're pushing behind, your team can't support you. You are completely on your own in this entire passageway. And so if you're able to fall back through mid, then your team is able to kind of support you and peek from similar angles and be able to get trades. Because if you see someone here, you know, these guys can also see them. All right, so you get an M4, body armor, just 2 flashes, and then I believe you play E-box again. You eventually move to middle and then A site. Alright. Alright, I remember. So on this round, you go into E-box, and then when it's clear that they are kind of taking the site, or at least they're outside, what you do is you give up all of canals, and then you go up and you go up to here, which is past what this player is holding. And it's past what this player is holding. So you're pretty much crossing in front of these two, like, risky areas, sort of. And it's sort of making yourself a little bit redundant. The way that you're generally going to be playing Anubis is you'll have someone in E-box, you'll have someone sort of around here, just one person. You'll have someone fighting mid, maybe somewhere around here, maybe a little bit pushed up. And then you'll have someone generally around camera, and you'll have someone either heaven or over by A main. So these are like These are like your 5 positions. So the person up here, his job is going to be to rotate. The person here, his job is going to be fight mid. Person here, his job is going to be to hold A main. The person back here, he's holding B main, while the person here is the alarm bell, essentially. So we see there's 3 of you here, and you're in a good spot. One of these people should probably go, or at least move to a different location. Kind of my point is that by you moving to here, you're not really changing anything about the defense. In fact, I feel like it's making it weaker. I think it's better if you just stay in E box and you either ask one of your teammates or just one of them moves over to maybe that position. Because sort of what happens is if you were to move out as well, your teammates will have to account for that. They'll have to sort of change how they're playing in order to accommodate you. And so ultimately what sort of happens is it puts you in an uncomfortable position because you're not ready for a fight the entire time you're moving. And it puts your teammates in an uncomfortable position because they set up here expecting you to be down there, and now you've moved position. And so now all 3 of you guys are figuring out where you got to go. So I think really just kind of got to settle down. They never execute on a site. You do like move over there. Right here, I don't really like what you're doing here. You almost die to it. Because you're challenging sort of an uncomfortable angle. Good flash. You didn't overcommit, which is good. And then you go back to E-box. And really, I feel like you kind of never should have left E-box. You just hold B main, sort of like how you are now. That way you're able to support your teammates from here. Alright, so I just now realized what happened in post. So we've got this guy who killed one of your teammates in middle, and that makes this a little bit weirder about what was happening. So he kills your teammate in middle here. Let me go and mute the volume. He kills him right here, and then your teammate ignores him, doesn't try to trade, and goes to kill someone in B main, and then everyone seems confused about where the guy went. And so I'm a little confused sort of about what happened here. It seems like some sort of communication issue or something along those lines. Wow, I drew a lot. My bad. Yeah, I was drawing all this under the assumption that you guys had no idea where he was, and that you guys really should have known that it was a site pretty much immediately as soon as you killed this guy. So I'll leave in everything I said over the next 2-3 minutes, but just know that given the fact that he killed your teammate in bottom mid, it definitely, I don't think you guys should have hung around B as long as you guys did. Okay, nothing's changed. So right, what just happened was your one teammate decided to go towards Temple, and you decided to go towards the E-box, and it meant that the entirety of B site was open. So just try to be mindful of if you are planning to leave your position, make sure your teammates aren't leaving position too. Unless this is something you guys have agreed on, or you can communicate, all right, I've given up E-box, or I've given up B site, and that way they know not to leave their position. Fortunately, you have a teammate who flanks, so I guess he's called that he flanked, and so that's why you felt comfortable. That's really the only thing I could think of. And then we get put into a 3v1, which is very hard. The reason is that you never want to give up a 1v1. So how do you play a 3v1? Some people say you play like 2 on B, 1 on A. Some people say you want 3 on B and then you retake A, or something along those lines. The problem with both of those, so if you have 2 on B and 1 on A, the problem is that if this person goes here, they've got a 1-on-1. And then if they win it, they have bomb plant, and then it's a 1v2. And that's very, very winnable. if you are playing 3v or 3 on B and 1 on A, then what's going to happen? So he can get a post plant for free because you guys have to rotate in. He's able to set up anywhere he wants, and so you have to spend a lot of time clearing for him. You know, he can maybe sneak into CT. You could fall back into like this cubby. He could be just playing around the pillar. Maybe he's just moving around here for noise. So there's risk to both. Generally, I think what's going to be best is you have 2 on B. You have 1 who's playing very safe on A. Maybe they're playing like this position here. So that way they can move around. They can hear if a bomb plant is coming in, or if the opponent is coming in, and they can communicate that so that you guys can rotate safely. What you don't want to have happen is he takes a fight, he dies, and now he's basically won the round because he's got the bomb down. So I said all that, and how do you personally really slot into that? Obviously, we see the kind of mistake, I guess, where you got timinged. If you were still in E-box, you would be able to see that this guy's crossing. And obviously, that's speaking with hindsight. So given your 3's position and given you don't know where he is, you know, I recognize that obviously that is not what we see here. But given off of how you guys have played, given how people have been moving around, I'd wager that the entirety of A site is not safe. And so I would be leaning a little bit more towards A. Of course, maybe the other option is he would happen to be in T spawn, but I'd probably just gamble towards A. So in your shoes, I'd be looking at that. I'd be like, all right, although we killed the guy B, we've cleared out B. You know, by getting this kill, we've cleared out B. And so you guys would all want to rotate towards A. So you get the op, and you're going to swing middle with it. I think going E-box with the op is perfect. It's like one of the best spots in the game for the op. You do go middle, and that's a pretty good spot as well. Unfortunately, it's a little... Your teammate makes it a little difficult for you to play here because he's fighting for middle with you. It's okay to have him here, but it makes it a little difficult because you guys are sort of making your spots a little redundant. I think if you have 2 here, you should be playing passive and you should be playing a crossfire. I don't really think that both of you guys should be challenging. Because if you challenge and both of you die, then that's middle lost and that's the round lost. You guys are sort of holding the exact same angle. Sure, I guess there's right and left side, but what'll happen is one of you is pretty much going to be taking the fight while the other one's just going to be sitting here doing nothing. And that works under some circumstances, but I don't really think you should be having someone do nothing at the start of the round. It's sort of a waste of a person. I'd only be doing that if, for example, you've been fighting middle for a while and they're just hanging out here. You know, what you could do is play a little bit more of a passive angle and play a crossfire with your teammate. But that would be later in the round. That's not a setup I'd be running at the start of the round. You do get a pick though. Great. You throw an alright flash. It does bait out the op shot, which is perfect. Now, as soon as I heard that op shot, I would not be peeking it. No way in hell. At least your teammate smokes it, so he feels a little bit better. But as soon as your teammate started pushing with that smoke, I would have rotated towards A site and supported. Not even because there's any information that they're A site, but you know, you guys have 1 pick, and so they're either going to be leaning B or leaning A. And so you've already got 2 on B. You've got someone who's fighting canals and able to kind of see through. So I'd just support the solo player. Get that pick, which is perfect. And this is another thing that it happens once or twice. And that is that smokes are not walls. What's going to happen here is you throw the smoke. It's not a great smoke because, and it only happens to be a good smoke because of how it lands. So So that smoke happens to clip this corner here and land inside. It's better if you aim at this wall here, and that way it'll block off the whole doorway. This smoke that you just threw, it was sort of chance that it landed where it did. Usually it's going to land up in this wall, and what'll happen is he'll have a gap on this right side that he'll probably exploit. So now you guys have lost the guy, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It happens. But you've lost the guy, and so how can you play it differently? How can you put yourself in a spot that makes sense? So again, it's a 3v1, and so you really should be leaning towards either a 2-on-1 setup or a 3-and-0 setup. What would have been best for you, I think, would have been to throw that smoke and just sit up here and hold it. You've got a teammate in mid already. You've got a teammate on B already. Well, sure, it does kind of give him 1v1s as long as you play it safe, and you're not challenging the very first angle he'll clear. You should be all right. You should feel confident because you have the op. However, that's trusting that your teammates are playing how you want them to play. You've got your teammate here who I believe he's been pushing through B main or sort of going through canal. You've got a teammate up here who's kind of going between mid and going between A site. Given that, I'm sure you can see the only spot that's not covered is A. And well, sure, it wasn't a risk or it wasn't a problem that you threw and left the smoke. It's still something I'd be concerned about. I'd just hold the smoke that way. Sure, you guys are kind of spread out, but as long as you and hopefully your teammates are playing it smart, you won't be put into 1v1 situations. He ended up saving, so there's no way that you would have been able to reach him. But if he did try to go for it, then playing A and just anchoring A would have been the move. So you got the op, and you're going to go and you're going to do something a little silly that I'm not really a fan of, and that's that you play plat. This is a bad spot for an op for 2 reasons. Oops. For 2 reasons. You just died, so I can't show you. So, 1, you can't fall back anywhere. Like, you are committed to this fight the moment you stand up there. Unless you have a smoke. If you are up here, you can't, fall back into the wall. You have to expose yourself more to this angle. So if you imagine, their sight line right here, or I guess their sight line, right up here is probably more accurate. You have to go into their sight line in order to get out. And that's not really a spot you want to be putting yourself in. If you have an op, what's going to be best is just holding the cross. Or, as I mentioned, you go down into E-box. That would have been ideal. Now, you weren't really aware that they had no money this round. Looking at this, I don't even think that would have been something I thought about. Given he saved the op, I guess you could assume that they are eco. It's also entirely possible that they forced up with the op, and they kind of did, but a couple of them could have had Galils or what have you. But the main reason this angle is bad is you can't fall back anywhere. You want to be somewhere where you can get a shot, you can get out easily, and then you can also reposition easily. Here, while yes, you can get a shot, you can maybe get a kill, you're really forced to swing into that angle again, and that just puts you at risk. Then you've got middle, and we see the same sort of, I guess, issue. I don't want to say issue because there's no wrong or there's no right way to be playing the game, but you make yourself a little redundant here, or you sort of make your teammate's position a little redundant here because you guys are both holding this sight line. Pause it because I know you're about to die there. It makes this sight line a little bit redundant. Sure, it makes it easier to trade. But unless you're actively fighting for the space, I don't really think both of you should be here. Right here, we just see you don't counter strafe into the angle. You sort of walk into it up along this line instead of out horizontally. And you weren't really ready for the fight, which ends up getting you killed. This is a decent off angle. I'm sure you probably saw it from like Austin CS or whatever. I do remember one of them covering it. Um, unfortunately, you whiff, but yeah, it's a good off angle. As long as your teammate is aware that you're playing it, it's all right. The main downside of it is that because it's so passive, let me see. Oh, I need this fucking. So you're holding this angle. This early in the round, they're not really going to be able to get into E-Box. Maybe because you got body blocked, they could have. I'd save this spot for a little bit later in the round, though. Alright, so go with the Deagle here. It's an eco round.
Move it, son.
So right now you need to have your gun out. Yeah. As soon as you cross that doorway, you need to have the gun out because there's a risk that they could be there. Right now you're treating the Deagle like it's an up. And what I mean by that is you're holding an angle that's too tight for you to realistically get a kill off. Sure, you might get lucky and like headshot them, but because of how close you're holding the angle and because you don't have any like any room to breathe, really, you know, you have this sliver and that's it. Like if they cross, you can't adjust. No one really has the reaction time to be shooting someone who's crossing here, and so you want to be able to give yourself a little bit more leeway. I understand you want to be safe. You want to be able to reposition if you see them, but you're holding the angle too tight here. It means that you're needing to swing into him. And it's just an unnecessary risk. So you guys do attempt to sort of retake. I think your teammate should be saving. You maybe try to get a gun. Happy you know how to get down quietly there though, but unfortunately it does not work out. I think you should have saved, but as I mentioned, you didn't have a gun worth saving. So now we got a weird setup. We've got 2 guys mid, 3 guys B, and this happens to be the round they go B. Here you do hear them going A. Good. You've communicated to your friends. I would not throw a left click flash just because it goes too far. And I was talking so you can hear it, but you can hear this guy jumping up on the wood, and that's just another thing. If you hear the audio cue, you might have been able to hear it, him like walk and jump up. And unfortunately, because he got up there, he got a 2-piece, and you died because you. So here they're all mid. Should have that communicated. You still do work your way up here. As I mentioned, I'm not a fan of pushing this. Because sometimes they'll go with deck and then they'll check it. So my main thing is that you heard a lot of the middle, and so you take a little bit too much time clearing stuff. Because you heard so many middle, I would assume that it's just, and so you can be a little bit faster with the clears. If you're going to be pushing that, I recommend just right-clicking a flash through the smoke instead of throwing it. That way this flash will pop just outside the smoke. And you can maybe convert a kill off it. Regardless, this has been a very good eco round. But no, it's the last round. You've got a full buy here. You got a kit, perfect. You can splurge, or you try to splurge on a Zeus. I've liked that your team has switched up positions every round. It does make it harder for them to kind of figure out how to play. The other team, that is. Like they hear you've decided to switch and support main. I don't want you swinging that. As soon as you saw his leg, I'd fall back and just get utility down because you know that they're challenging it. If they're that far up, you know they're interested in taking more space. And so, because of that, swinging into them when you know they're there it's a little risky. It's a risk that you don't need to be taking. I think it's better if you just throw a Molotov down or you fall off and you throw a smoke down and just slow it down so that your team can get there. Your goal as an anchor is to stall for as much time as you can. So by dying early, of course, you're not really stalling for time. But anyways, we're on T side now. You get armor. Most of your team... Actually, only one of your other teammates does. And two of your teammates don't even fucking buy anything. What weirdos. Alright, one of them still doesn't buy anything. What a weirdo. You should have your gun out when you're crossing. They can see you. Unless you're just like hopping across and you're hoping that they don't hit you. Alright, so it's a Mac 10 rush on B. And you know a lot of really solid B utility. Absolutely plaster them. And this is one of the rounds where your entry is not that great. It's okay because you got SMGs. You want to be strafing as much as you can. I'm happy that as soon as you realize you were whiffing that spray, you backed off and gave it a fight. You consider going for it here, but you ultimately decided to give it up. And if you might remember, I mentioned I'm not really a fan of going through that doorway. It pushes you a little bit too far forward and away from your team. This is a good flank, though. It doesn't work out, but it's a good flank, and I like the idea. So because you guys are down 4 rounds, I probably would have upgraded to an AK. You've got a lot of money. But of course, if you have a plan in mind for the Mac 10, it can't work out. So I don't remember what you do. All right, it's this round. You guys are setting up for a B take. Someone's smoke misses. So with those 2 kills, you guys should know you have sight. There's no reason you should be using more utility to take sight. If they're pushed that far up, then it's a gamble. I'm not sure. I hope you get that M41. Should have picked it up when you were running through, but it's alright, it happens. You're gonna throw a full set of utility for your team to take a B site, and then none of them actually wants to go through. You throw smokes for everything, and then no one actually goes through. So by now, like, the first smoke you threw is already like halfway done. And yeah, I know there's a smoke down, but you have 1 guy out right now. Here you almost have good entry pathing. It's almost what I wanted to see. I would have liked if you challenged E-Box though. No one's made it past the pillar yet, so the entirety of backside is still a risk. Right, so you guys are setting up for an A take again, and your teammate has heard them behind you in B. Got 1 to kills. As soon as either he died or he hurt someone, you guys should be someone's smoke misses. It lands sort of on sight. Or it landed outside. Kind of all over the place. So, you had a teammate here. He heard them pushing up B main. So you've got 2 options. Either you guys all here gotta speed the fuck up before they realize, or now that they know the B site is clear, you guys gotta go, or you guys gotta figure out and fight your way out either to canal or up middle or support your teammate there. So we're going for the B take again. I hope you're using I just noticed this. I hope you're using a bind to go directly to each item, each grenade. I saw you were cycling through, and I'm really hoping that you have the button for it. That is just unfortunate, that death there. For a good old B take. So by now they've seen this a few times, so hopefully they are recognizing it. This is a great spot to be playing with your teammate, because you can trade off of him. Unfortunately, your teammate drops in CT, so you need to put that. Recognize that he's still there. You don't really need to keep taking the fight, because he has to come to you. So, because you own the site, you don't have to be fighting for it. And unfortunately, that was sort of their entry into the round. And they barely squeak out the fuse. So B site hasn't been working too great for you guys. I want to maybe see a mid take or a full A take. Throw one for canals so that signifies for me that you're gonna try A. That smoke missed. Is that for double doors maybe? I thought it was a canal smoke. So it's good flash. I think it maybe hit your teammate, but so right here you guys are planning and you don't really have sight, and look how passive you're playing. I think you want to be trying to not necessarily push, but get out of that corner on sight. You know, you can set up in like this back corner here. It's a great spot. But sitting up here, it puts you in a spot where they can either peek you from both sides, and so it's very, very uncomfortable. Ideally, you want to try to get back either to here or maybe the pillar, and just it gives you a little bit of space to move around, a little bit of cover. Maybe you can get back to main. Maybe you can play like right here by that box, and that way you're a bit covered. But playing up against this wall here is not ideal. A couple better spots that you can put yourself in. You do end up getting the round though. We're going for the B take again. Great Molotov. Hear that he's there, so you guys get the round without any problems. Seems like you're gonna go for the B take again. As I mentioned, you guys have been doing it a lot. And when you throw it, you guys throw it off rip. So now that they're seeing this grenade, we're seeing the people in the middle, the people in A main, in camera, they're moving. So you guys have thrown the same utility set 5 times in a row, more or less. And so now they've learned and they're responding to it. You planted, you haven't cleared any of sight. Round's looking really dicey because no one's cleared flat. Now you're alone in 1v2, and this is a hard spot because you're exposed to both spots at once. It's unlucky. I think I'd like to see some slower rounds. The utility set's good, but because you've thrown it a distinct way each time, um, or maybe not distinct, but the same way each time. They've learned, they've adapted, and so we'll see how you guys respond to that. And it seems to be going A, or at least setting up for A. I believe that's a smoking through earlier. Oh, it lands top of the yes. So the lineup you have, if you're trying to smoke E-box, I believe you should be aiming at the top right of that windowsill. Is I think what it's meant to be instead of here. If you're going for middle, then that works. But if your goal is Z-box, then I think you need to aim a little bit lower. Yeah, so this is the round that they've learned everything. They know how you guys are playing. You guys always throw a full set of utility when you're taking the site, and you always do that at the start. So really, just need to change up the pace a little bit, play a little bit slower, play for some picks. That's a 1v2. They have possession over bomb. Now there's stuff out. It's the game. So that's mostly everything. I'll let you know, of course, on Discord if there's anything else that I'm perhaps forgetting, but I hope you find it useful. This is one of my favorite maps, so I can talk a lot about it. So obviously, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for coming back. I hope that means that you like what I do, and I hope that it doesn't mean that you're like, I want someone else, and so you just keep submitting in hopes it's someone else. But I'm kidding, of course. I don't mind if you're like, I'm sick of hearing this monotonous this guy's nasally voice. It's all right. I understand. So thanks for sticking through the end. Thanks again for submitting the demo. Have a good one, man. Take care.